I want your entire salary every month, Sylvester, every cent, Anita said, her eyes cold as stone. Or this marriage is over. Sylvester froze, the promotion letter still in his trembling hand. He had worked 10 years for that moment, and in one breath, his wife had turned it into a threat. What Anita didn't know was that the man standing across from her wasn't the same naive husband she once controlled. He had already made a decision that would flip their marriage, and her world, upside down. Viewers, what would you do if the person you love most suddenly demanded control over your entire life and paycheck? Sylvester Hartley just stood there, frozen, his briefcase still in his hand, his promotion letter still in his pocket. It was supposed to be one of the happiest evenings of his life. He had worked years for that promotion, fought through endless nights of exhaustion and self-doubt. He wanted to come home to his wife, Anita, and share his victory. Instead, he was met with a demand that felt like betrayal wearing perfume. He blinked, trying to process what he just heard. Anita, what do you mean your entire salary? Anita crossed her arms, her eyes cold and unreadable. I mean exactly what I said. From now on, I'll handle all the finances. I want your paycheck deposited into my account every month. I'll take care of the bills, the savings, everything. Sylvester frowned. We've always handled money together. Why now? Because I don't trust how you spend, she snapped. You're too generous with your family. You give out money like it's candy. And I'm tired of living small when you could do better if I managed things. Sylvester let out a slow, shaky breath. Anita, I just got promoted today. I wanted to celebrate with you, not fight about control. But Anita's expression didn't soften. Instead, she leaned closer and said the words that would haunt him for months to come. If you can't hand over your paycheck, Sylvester, maybe I married the wrong man. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause in disbelief. That night they slept on opposite sides of the bed. The warmth between them, gone. The laughter, the small touches, the way she used to rest her head on his chest, gone. All that remained was an invisible wall, built brick by brick with pride and disappointment. Sylvester stared at the ceiling, wondering when love had turned into a transaction. He wasn't a stingy man. He had given Anita everything he could. But this was different. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about power. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping gently on the windows. Inside, Sylvester made a silent vow. If she wants control so badly, I'll give it to her. But not the way she expects. He didn't know it yet. But that decision would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, the air in the Hartley home was thick with silence. The smell of coffee lingered, but it did nothing to warm the coldness that had settled overnight. Anita moved around the kitchen briskly, her robe brushing against the tiled floor as if even her footsteps were impatient. Sylvester sat at the dining table, his mind elsewhere. He had barely touched his breakfast. Every time he looked at her, he saw not his wife, but a stranger he could no longer understand. The woman who once prayed for him when he struggled to find work now demanded proof of love in dollars and cents. Are you going to eat? She asked flatly, without looking up from her phone. I'm not hungry, he replied quietly. She shrugged, still scrolling through her messages. Don't forget your promise, Sylvester. Payday is Friday. He glanced at her. The same woman who once believed in shared dreams now looked like a manager reviewing her employee. He said nothing, just nodded and left for work. At the office, everyone congratulated him for his promotion. There were smiles, handshakes, and even a small celebration in the conference room. But inside, Sylvester felt nothing. The joy that should have filled him had been stolen by the thought of what awaited him at home. That evening, as he drove back, he stared at the city lights, glowing, bright, full of life, and wondered when his own had dimmed. Marriage to him was supposed to be partnership. But Anita had turned it into a battlefield, where love was measured by submission. Friday came faster than expected. When his paycheck hit his account, Sylvester sat on the edge of the bed staring at the figures on his phone screen. It wasn't just money. It was years of hard work, late nights, sacrifices. Anita walked in, towel wrapped around her head. Did it come in? Yes. Then transfer it. He looked up at her, his voice calm. Are you sure this is what you want? Her tone was sharp. Don't make me repeat myself. He exhaled slowly, tapped on his phone, and transferred the entire sum. The notification sound from her phone echoed through the room, a small digital chime that felt louder than thunder. Anita smiled for the first time that week. Good. Now we're finally on the same page. Sylvester didn't reply. He watched her walk away with a kind of grace that used to charm him, but now only reminded him how far apart they'd grown. Days turned into weeks. Each month, he repeated the same ritual. His salary left his account and went into hers. Anita became the financial queen of their home. She handled bills, savings, and shopping. Friends admired how organized their marriage looked from the outside. But inside, Sylvester was quietly disappearing, one transfer at a time. He stopped laughing as much. He stopped dreaming out loud. Even his colleagues noticed a change. And one afternoon, while staring out his office window, Sylvester whispered to himself, She doesn't see it. But I'm already gone. He meant it. Not physically yet, but emotionally, he was packing up, piece by piece. He didn't know when, but he knew one thing for sure. A storm was coming. By the third month, Sylvester had mastered the art of silence. He no longer argued. He no longer explained. He simply nodded whenever Anita spoke, did what she asked, and moved through their home like a ghost renting space in his own life. Anita, on the other hand, thrived on the illusion of control. With her husband's entire income at her disposal, she had begun living differently. New clothes, new hair, even a new confidence that bordered on arrogance. She started hosting small get-togethers with her friends, boasting subtly about her financially disciplined husband. Her favorite line was, "You just have to train your man to be responsible. If you leave them, they'll waste everything." Each time Sylvester overheard those words, something inside him broke a little more. But what hurt him most wasn't her spending. It was her tone, the way she spoke as if he were a project, not a partner. One Friday evening, Sylvester came home to find Anita sitting at the dining table with two of her friends. They were sipping wine, laughing, and scrolling through online shopping sites. Anita looked up briefly and said, "Oh, honey, you're back. Did you make the transfer?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "Good. We were just talking about buying a new couch. The old one makes the living room look cheap." Her friends giggled, and Sylvester forced a smile before heading to the bedroom. But behind that door, his calm expression faded. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the floor, his chest tightening. He remembered their early years, when they could barely afford rent, but held each other tight through it all. Anita had once told him, "I don't care how much you make, Sylvester, as long as we have each other." Now it was as if that version of her had died and left behind a stranger wearing her face. Later that night, when she fell asleep, Sylvester sat in the dark living room. The glow from the streetlight cut across his face, highlighting the exhaustion in his eyes. He opened his laptop and began typing something quietly, a document titled Transfer Request. It was an internal company form, requesting relocation to another branch in a different state. The form asked for a reason. He typed one word, personal. For a long time, he stared at the screen before hitting save. From that moment, something shifted inside him. He stopped waiting for her to change. He stopped hoping for understanding. Instead, he began preparing, carefully, quietly, with the same patience that had once built his success. To Anita, everything still seemed fine. She noticed nothing unusual because control had made her blind. But Sylvester was already moving in shadows, setting in motion a plan that would leave her speechless. And as he watched her sleep that night, he whispered softly, "You wanted everything, Anita. Now you'll have exactly that. Everything you asked for. The following week, Sylvester began crafting his escape. Not out of anger, but clarity. He'd realized that love without respect was just captivity in disguise. And Anita had built a gilded cage for him, thinking money was the lock. She never imagined he could walk out of it without turning back. At work, Sylvester handed in his transfer request to the Human Resources Department. His impeccable record and recent promotion made the process smooth. Within a few days, he received a confidential approval letter. Transfer to Denver branch effective next month. The move came with a relocation bonus, a quiet increase in salary that no one but he and HR would know about. He didn't tell Anita. Not yet. He wanted her to believe he was still the obedient husband she thought she controlled. That evening, when he came home, she was seated in front of the TV with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up. "You're late," she said coldly. "Dinner's in the microwave." He smiled faintly. "Work's been crazy lately. They're restructuring departments." "Good," she replied. "Maybe that'll teach you to stay focused. The bills for the month are heavy. Rent, utilities, groceries. You should be lucky you have someone like me managing everything." Sylvester nodded. "You're right, Anita. I really am lucky." She didn't notice the irony in his voice. He'd learned how to hide emotion behind politeness, the most dangerous skill a hurt man can master. Over the next few weeks, he began quietly preparing. He gathered his essential documents, birth certificate, degree, employment letters, and stored them at his office. He opened a separate account under a new bank and redirected a small portion of his company allowances there, enough to start over, but small enough that Anita wouldn't notice. At home, everything looked normal. He still made the monthly transfers. He still smiled at her friends when they visited. He even agreed to take her shopping one weekend, nodding patiently as she tried on dresses she didn't need. To her, it was submission. To him, it was the final act of his performance. Then, one night as she slept, he sat again at his desk, this time, writing a short letter. The first line read, "I'm tired of being treated like a paycheck." He folded it neatly and placed it inside an envelope, tucked away in the bottom drawer of their wardrobe. He would leave it behind when the time came. At work, his colleagues noticed a change in his demeanor, a quiet confidence replacing his previous gloom. His manager even said, "You look different, Sylvester. Like someone who just found peace." He smiled. "Maybe I did." The last week of the month came faster than expected. Anita, as usual, reminded him of payday. "Make sure you transfer everything by Friday morning," she said. "No excuses." He nodded calmly. "Don't worry, Anita. You'll get it. Every cent." He said it so gently, so convincingly, that even if she'd looked him in the eye, she wouldn't have seen the storm gathering behind his calm expression. Because this time, when he said every cent, he meant something entirely different. Friday morning arrived with deceptive calm. The sun was bright, the city alive, and inside the Hartley home, everything looked perfectly normal, or so it seemed. Sylvester woke earlier than usual. He stood in the doorway of their bedroom for a long moment, watching Anita sleep. The same woman he once adored now lay curled up, peaceful and unaware that this was the last morning she would ever wake up to him beside her. He turned away, took a slow breath, and began moving with deliberate quietness. His suitcase, in a small, black and unremarkable, sat under the bed. It had been there for weeks, packed with clothes, documents, and the essentials of a new life. He'd waited for the right moment. That moment had come. Downstairs, the smell of coffee filled the air. The kitchen felt strange, familiar yet foreign, as though he were walking through someone else's life. On the counter sat a stack of unpaid bills Anita had been managing, yet somehow always forgot to clear on time. He looked at them and shook his head. He placed an envelope beside them, the one he'd written nights ago. The words were simple, honest, and final. He picked up his car keys, grabbed his briefcase, and glanced one last time around the house. Every picture frame, every piece of furniture, every trace of laughter that once filled the rooms. It all seemed like ghosts trapped in time. Then, with a deep breath, Sylvester opened the front door and stepped into freedom. He didn't drive to work that day. Instead, he headed straight to the airport. The company had already made his travel arrangements. A one-way ticket to Denver awaited him. As the plane took off, he looked out the window and felt something he hadn't felt in months: peace. Meanwhile, back home, Anita woke up to an empty bed. She checked her phone. No good morning text. Strange. Sylvester was never one to leave without saying something. She walked downstairs, calling out, "Sylvester?" No answer. Her eyes caught the envelope on the counter. She frowned, tearing it open. Her breath caught as she read the first line. "Anita, I gave you everything. My time, my trust, my heart. But you only wanted my paycheck. You turned love into a contract and partnership into control. So I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Everything. Everything that's left. The house, the car, the money in your account. Keep it all. But you'll never have me again." Her hands trembled. She dropped the letter on the counter, rushing through the house. The closet empty, his shoes gone, his laptop missing. Her heart began to race as she realized he hadn't just left for work. He had left for good. She grabbed her phone and called him. "The number you have dialed is not reachable," the voice message repeated again and again. By evening, panic had turned to rage. She called his colleagues, but no one had heard from him. His office said he was on approved transfer. Transfer? To where? The truth hit her with a slow, cold burn. She had pushed him too far. And now the one thing she thought she controlled had slipped right through her fingers. Days turned into weeks, and the once lively Hartley home became a museum of silence. Anita wandered through it like a ghost, surrounded by everything she had demanded, yet feeling emptier than she ever imagined possible. At first, she told herself Sylvester would come back. "He's just being dramatic," she whispered one morning, staring at the untouched side of the bed. "He'll realize he can't live without me." But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. Sylvester wasn't the kind of man who acted out of impulse. If he had left, he had planned it. And that thought terrified her. The calls kept going unanswered. His email bounced back with an automated message. "This account is no longer active." His company refused to share details of his transfer. Even his family, who once adored her, had gone silent. For the first time in years, Anita felt powerless. The bills began to pile up. Without Sylvester's steady hand managing their bigger expenses, she quickly realized how fragile her control had been. The house she was so proud of had debts she'd ignored. The credit cards she'd used freely were now past due, and the friends who once toasted to her perfect marriage slowly disappeared when the invitations stopped coming. She tried to keep up appearances at first, showing up at brunches, pretending everything was fine. But gossip travels faster than truth. People had started whispering, "Did you hear? Her husband left her. Took everything." "No, she drove him away. I heard she demanded all his money." Each time she overheard such comments, her stomach twisted. One night, sitting alone at the dining table, Anita stared at the flickering candlelight. The same table where she once laughed with friends, showing off her expensive dinnerware, now felt like a courtroom. Every memory replayed. The first time Sylvester cooked for her, the late-night conversations about dreams, the little surprises he used to plan just to make her smile. She realized how quickly she had traded all of it for power she didn't need. As the days passed, the silence grew heavier. She stopped cooking. She barely slept. Sometimes she found herself dialing his old number even though she knew it wouldn't connect. Then, one rainy afternoon, she received a letter. Not from Sylvester, but from the bank. Her savings account, which once seemed full, was almost drained. The financial comfort she built on his labor was fading fast. Anita pressed the letter against her chest and sobbed quietly. Not because of the money, but because of what it symbolized. Everything she thought she controlled, the house, the bills, the lifestyle, was slipping away. And the one person who could have steadied it all was gone. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, echoing the turmoil inside her. For the first time since he left, Anita whispered into the empty room, "Sylvester, I'm sorry, but apologies, like echoes, mean nothing when the listener is gone." And as she sat there clutching the fading letter, a knock came at the door, sharp, unexpected, and chilling. The knock came again, firmer this time, echoing through the hollow house like a warning. Anita wiped her tears, heart racing. She wasn't expecting anyone. For a brief second, she wondered if it could be Sylvester. Hope flickered, fragile and desperate as she rushed to the door. But when she opened it, there was no one, just the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the marble steps. Her eyes dropped. A brown envelope lay on the ground, soaked at the edges. There was no name, no return address, only one word scrawled in black ink. "Read." Anita carried it inside, hands trembling. She tore it open and found a single sheet of paper, written in Sylvester's handwriting. The same familiar loops and curves she'd once loved tracing with her fingers. "By the time you read this, I'll be far from the life we built together. Or rather, the life I thought we built. I loved you deeply, Anita. Enough to give you the world. But you mistook love for weakness. You asked for my salary, my effort, my trust, and I gave them. But when you demanded control over my very existence, you lost me. I won't fight for someone who values money more than marriage. Don't look for me. I've started over where peace lives and pride dies. Take this house. It's yours. Take everything in it. You've earned it. But know this. What I gave from love, you turned into currency. I hope one day when silence becomes too loud, you'll hear what I tried to say all along. That love is not ownership. Goodbye, Anita." Her vision blurred as tears spilled down her cheeks. Every word pierced like glass. She sank to her knees, clutching the paper as if holding on could bring him back. The rain outside grew heavier, almost as though nature itself mourned with her. She read the letter over and over until the ink began to smudge under her tears. Then she noticed something strange, a faint watermark at the bottom corner. The Pines Retreat Center. Her heart skipped. That was a secluded estate miles outside the city, a place Sylvester once mentioned during their happier days. Could he really be there? The thought lit a small fire inside her. For the first time in months, she felt purpose. She needed to see him, to apologize, to explain, to undo the storm she'd caused. The next morning, she packed a small bag, clutching the letter to her chest. As she stepped out, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks, bathing the empty house in soft light. But unknown to her, the journey ahead wouldn't just bring answers, it would bring consequences. Because sometimes, finding the person you lost means facing the truth you've been running from. The road to the Pines was long, winding, and eerily quiet. Anita's car crawled through mist that hung thick over the countryside, swallowing every sound except the steady hum of the engine. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel, the letter sitting on the passenger seat like a ghost she couldn't escape. It had been 2 days since she received it, and she hadn't slept. Every word haunted her. Love is not ownership. She repeated it under her breath, as if saying it enough times would make it untrue. At last, she reached the gates of the Pines Retreat Center, tall, wrought iron, and covered in vines. A wooden sign hung beside them. Private property, no visitors without appointment. But Anita didn't care. She pushed open the small side gate and drove in. The place looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Neatly trimmed hedges, white cottages, the smell of pine and rain lingering in the air. Birds sang faintly in the distance, their melody at odds with the storm inside her chest. She parked in front of the main cottage and stepped out, heart pounding. A caretaker, an elderly man in a brown hat, appeared from behind the garden fence. "Good morning, ma'am," he greeted, wiping his hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone," Anita said quickly. "His name is Sylvester Cole. I believe he's staying here." The man's expression faltered for a moment, then softened with pity. "Ah, you must be his wife." Anita froze. You know him?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. A good man, quiet, respectful. Came here about a month ago." Her breath hitched. "Is he here now?" The caretaker hesitated. "He was, but..." He lowered his eyes. "He left suddenly 2 weeks ago. Didn't say much, just that he was traveling again. Asked me to hand this to you if you ever came." He pulled out another envelope, white this time, sealed neatly. Her fingers trembled as she took it. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. "Anita, if you're reading this, then you've come farther than I ever thought you would. That means something. It means maybe, just maybe, you understand. I'm not running from you, Anita. I'm running toward peace. Don't try to find me anymore. Learn to live without control, without pride. Learn to love yourself before trying to own someone else. The world isn't kind to those who realize too late what they destroyed. But maybe this journey will help you start again. Sylvester." Her knees weakened. The letter slipped from her fingers and drifted onto the wet grass. "Do you know where he went?" she asked faintly. The caretaker shook his head. "No, ma'am, but he seemed free, lighter than when he arrived." Anita turned toward the horizon, tears streaking down her face. The forest ahead whispered softly in the wind, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of what she'd lost. Not just a man, but the only person who ever truly loved her. Behind her, the caretaker sighed. "He said love is peace," he murmured. "And I think he finally found his." The drive back to the city felt longer than the journey out. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty road. Anita's eyes were swollen, her mind quiet. Too quiet. The anger, the pride, the endless need to win every argument. All of it had melted away, leaving behind only regret. When she reached home, the silence was unbearable. Every corner of the house echoed with memories. Laughter in the kitchen, late-night talks, whispered dreams of the future. She dropped her bag at the doorway and walked slowly to the living room. The air smelled stale, untouched for weeks. Her eyes fell on the framed photo above the fireplace. Their wedding day. Sylvester's smile was soft, almost shy, while she stood beside him radiant, confident, certain she'd never lose him. She touched the glass gently. "I'm sorry," she whispered. That night she sat at the dining table with both letters in front of her. The first one, soaked with tears and guilt. The second, calm and resolute. Together, they told the story of a man who had loved too deeply and a woman who had realized too late. In the following days, Anita tried to return to work, but nothing felt the same. The office chatter sounded distant. The compliments on her new hairstyle, her clothes, her perfume, meaningless. She had once believed success was measured in admiration, in control. But now she understood that peace had no audience. Weeks passed. She began volunteering at a counseling center, the same one she had once mocked for helping people who couldn't handle life. She listened to couples arguing, to wives weeping, to husbands confessing their exhaustion. And each time she offered advice, her voice trembled with sincerity. "Don't test the one who loves you," she told one woman quietly. "You might win the argument, but lose the person." One evening, she returned home to find an unfamiliar package at her doorstep. Small, brown, and neatly wrapped. Inside was a plain wooden box. When she opened it, she found a silver bracelet. Her breath caught. It was the one she had given Sylvester on his birthday years ago, engraved with his initials. Beneath it was a note written in his handwriting. "Peace is not found in places, Anita. It's found in people who learn to let go." Tears blurred her vision again. She smiled through them, not with sadness, but with acceptance. She knew now that Sylvester wasn't coming back. But somehow that was okay. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing control. She was embracing peace. She placed the bracelet on her wrist, feeling its cold weight settle like closure. Then she whispered to the empty room, "Thank you, Sylvester, for teaching me what love really means." Outside, the wind rustled softly through the trees, and in that quiet house, Anita finally felt what her husband had found long ago: peace that no amount of money could buy.